Here we go. Yeah. We still moving, y'all. Break it down.
NAACP, we want to say welcome to the second edition of the School to Prison Pipeline Forum. As we begin this evening celebration, we ask everyone if you would stand on your feet as we pledge the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We are grateful tonight that we live in a village where we have a leader at the helm who is concerned about our children, who's concerned about our education system, who's concerned about the health and the welfare of our community. I want you to put your hands together as we receive our mayor, Mayor Don Ryan, as he comes to greet us on this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Gates, just as I wrote it. Thank you very much. But I want to thank everybody. Certainly I want to thank the sponsors of this event. I want to thank the panelists, the moderator, and all of you for attending this very important occasion. And I have my own views, but tonight's the opportunity to hear some of the experts speak. So I will take my seat and join you as I learn and see if we can develop an even better village. I love Hempstead, and just to verify what Dr. Gates said, this is my 57th year as a volunteer coach, and the kids that I'm coaching are practicing right now. Obviously, the assistant is running the show. I'm here, and I want to be here, but I do love the village, and I thank you for this opportunity to tell all of you that, to tell you I love you as well. Thank you kindly.
While you're clapping, we want you to clap for what we call the double trustee, Lamont Johnson. He is trustee of the Hempstead Union Free School District as well as trustee of the Incorporated Village of Hempstead. We want him to come very briefly at this time to greet us. Mr. Trustee Lamont Johnson.
Good evening. I'm happy you said very briefly because I took 30 minutes instead of 30 seconds. Just want to welcome everybody for coming. I hope this meeting will be an action meeting. After we hear what we have to hear tonight, I hope we'll take action. Thank you.
So, as we get ready to begin tonight's presentation, in the month of November, we held School to Prison Pipeline 1, and it was phenomenal. The room was packed, but more than the room being packed, everyone walked away with a sense of urgency that we must immediately go to work, not only to help our district, but to help our community as a whole. And so it was through that conversation that Mr. Pope, myself, and Mr. Marcellus Morris, who have come to the village and said, hey, when can we do the next one? But tonight, we changed the panel up a little bit. We have some educators, but we also have some persons who work in the trenches in the community. And so we want to change the conversation. Those of you that were here on the first one, you understand we had many persons from probation, we had those persons from Amistad, we had a number of different attorneys, judges on the panel, but this time we decided to take it go another route, because as we dive into tonight's conversation, we're going to pause so that we can sort of kind of get some group sessions going, that we can walk away with some deliverables. Everyone responded how phenomenal the last one was, but we didn't walk away with action items. And so tonight, it is our intent that when we leave this room, we will have some very drilled down, actionable items that we can walk away from this room with. So I'm going to introduce to you the young man who is going to take us further into tonight's presentation. And that's none other than our Mr. Reggie Pope Sr., who is the president of the National Action Network of Nassau County. Before he comes, I'm always grateful to have our community leaders here, so I don't want to go into calling you name by name, but if all of you would please stand so that we can acknowledge your presence, that would be really great. Mr. Benjamin, you don't lead in this community anymore? I'm just a little confused. And I need somebody to help me out. All of our community leaders. As you know, it's dangerous when I'm here, right? But we're also grateful for our detective, Warner, who is always on the front line relative to our district, always. So we're grateful for him being here tonight. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I understand that we live in a time that everyone likes to be in the right now. And therefore, you keep your phones on, you keep them at your hip, you keep them at your ear, you keep them on your ear, you keep them on your collar, you keep them on your neck, you keep them in your bag, you keep them on your leg. I get it. But I'm going to ask for this conversation tonight, if you would just oblige me and turn your phones on silent so that there'll be no interruptions when we begin. Because we really believe that this is a serious issue which requires serious attention. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Reginald Cole.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Could you please give yourself a hand?
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
I am so happy to see you all here because it shows that you care, that you're devoted to making sure that the young people of our community have a bright future where they can grow up to be doctors and lawyers and plumbers and electricians and engineers, and they do not find themselves entwined in the prison industrial complex. A complex in which young people are funneled into prisons for profit. So just to give you some background, as many of you were here, or some of you may not have been here, the topic today is the school to prison pipeline, also known as the preschool to prison pipeline. So since the 13th Amendment, people are not supposed to be made to work involuntarily, right? Slavery was abolished. But some people are allowed to work involuntarily. People who are in prison. So for people who are descendants of slaves, a part of vulnerable immigrant groups, unfortunately, there's an entire system devoted to making sure that many of them end up in prison so that they can engage in labor. Many of the companies that we all love, that we go to on a weekly, monthly basis to shop, benefit from prison labor. These companies might be McDonald's, Macy's, etc. Now, what's worse is that many students of color are being funneled into prison so that they can work for free. How do we untangle this mess? So you may ask, how are they funneled? And this was the topic of discussion last time. They are funneled through an education system that is not culturally responsive to their needs. Very often, they are bored in school. They're bored out of their mind. They're funneled through discipline practices. If a student gets suspended over and over and over again, do we believe that that student will come to enjoy school? No, they won't enjoy school. And very often, where will they wind up if they are dropping out of school? They'll wind up on the street, involved in gang violence, etc. So during our last meeting, we came up with 5 areas that we need to focus on in order to unravel the mess. And this time, you all will actually have an opportunity to work on 5-step action plans with respect to those areas. And so don't think you're here just to listen. You're here to work. At the end of the hour, at 8 o'clock, we are going to have breakout sessions. So I want to just discuss some of the breakout sessions so that you are aware, so that it may start percolating in your brain. And then we're going to introduce our esteemed panelists, and each of them will speak on one of the particular topics. So topic 1, how do we create a pipeline of diverse educators? Studies have shown that when African American and Latino students have teachers that look like them, they experience more compassionate discipline. Their rates of suspensions decrease. However, during the last session, we had the superintendent of Roosevelt, Dr. Marnie Hazelton, and she said she was having a hard time recruiting Black and brown teachers in Roosevelt. So all over Nassau County, you have districts that are easily 90%, 95% Black and Latino, but when you look at the administrators and the teachers, they're 90, 95% not Black and Latino. And so how do we create that pipeline? That's one issue that we will have a breakout session to discuss. Second, how do we create a pipeline of diverse police officers who are culturally sensitive? So this is another study. This is a video simulation. They say, if the person has a gun, shoot. If the person does not have a gun, don't shoot. Can you all guess what the most common mistake was based on race? If the black person did not have a gun, they perceived the gun, and what did they do? They shot. When a white person had a gun, somehow they perceived the person not to have a gun, and they refrained from shooting. So this shows you how the implicit bias is so strong that it comes across in video simulations. How do we unwind that? So that's another topic. So keep these topics in the back of your mind, because you will be in charge of the 5-step plan for this. Third topic, how can we make curriculums more engaging? So some of you are in schools and your children come home and they tell you, we're bored out of our mind. How do we make sure that the curriculums are more engaging, that they reflect the students' interests, so that they feel motivated, excited, happy every morning when they're going to school? And then fourth, how can we ensure that people who do find themselves in trouble are treated equitably? So now, some of you won't be surprised. The lack of equity in the criminal justice system is not just black, white, and Latino. It actually goes down to skin tone, people. Can you imagine that a study out of North Carolina revealed that dark-skinned black women got higher sentences than lighter-skinned black women? According to the study, or the people who created the study, lighter-skinned black women were seen as more feminine and therefore were given lighter sentences. I just give you this example to say that the bias is so implicit, it's so overwhelming, that it's not even fair across the board when we're considering one ethnicity, not less across ethnicities. So you all will be responsible for that. And fifth, how can we make sure that when young people are released, they are given the resources necessary to thrive? So those are our 5 subjects. This is our panel of experts. I'm going to have each one of them introduce themselves because I don't have their bios, and they can say their bios better than me. So first, Mr. Hank Williams.
Good evening. I first want to, can you hear me? Yes. Good evening. I first want to thank Mr. Pope for inviting me tonight. Spoke about an action plan, so I'm certainly happy to be here and want to get involved with an action plan to save our community and save our children. I've actually been working in the Hempstead School District for 22 years. I've been in education for 26, have 4 years to go. And for most of my life, I've either coached or worked in the school system. And so I have an ear to the community, I have a heart to the community, and basically just want to see young people thrive. I have to say that one of the things that keeps me going and keeps me humble is that I've seen kids change. I've seen kids come about through struggling times and change their lives and become individuals who have made it and become professionals. And so that means a lot, especially when kids come back and they're now working, and some of them who are teachers now in the district, some of them who are police officers now in the district. It shows that all students can make it no matter what the challenges are. And so I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of this panel with these great individuals up here. And I'm hoping that at the end of the night, we'll have an action plan that can save our community.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. We appreciate that. Next up, Mr. Jack Beerwith. Doctor, thank you.
Either way, in fact, all of my career I've been known as Jack, so it doesn't really make much difference whether it's a doctor or not. I actually worked in Hempstead from 1974 to 77, knew Don then. Not very many people we knew then are still around. I had an amazing time here. Really enjoyed it. I was doing grants at a time when we were getting a lot of grants. I've been a superintendent since 1980. I was 9 years superintendent in Freeport, just down the road. And then I've been around the United States. I retired in July of 15. I'm back here because the Commissioner of Education in New York came to me and said that she was really troubled by what was going on in Hempstead and asked me if I would come in. I started education believing that education, I won't say could solve all problems, but really thought that it would solve almost all problems. I don't believe that anymore, but I've changed my feelings in a couple of ways. First, I know that it's simply not success in class. That getting an A, doing well on state tests is important, but it's not just that. An educational system needs to be a variety of things, and I think we'll explore that more. I've learned that there should be at least one adult in school who is paying attention and has a connection to a kid. The kids that I've met who've been in trouble in life did not have somebody that they could turn to, or if they didn't turn to them, who went to them and said, "What's on your mind? What's bothering you?" And intervened. Intervened as a friend and as an advocate. I will also say that while good education does not solve all problems, I've also realized that bad education leaves kids hamstrung. If they are not being adequately prepared to go out into the world, we are not doing what they deserve. They need the doors opened, and without a good education, a lot of doors are closed. Even the military requires a higher level of education than they did before. Most jobs require a higher level of education. If there's not a good school system, it really hamstrings kids. So I'm glad I agreed to this, Reggie, but I have to say that it is the idea that we are going to come out of here with some action plans that makes me particularly pleased to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Bureau. Mr. Keith Saunders.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Saunders. Currently, I am the dean at Uniondale High School. I am the former dean at the ABGS Middle School. I did 6 years there, and I was also an employee with the STAR program of Hempstead High School. Being a community advocate, I'm an advocate for children, I'm an advocate for families. I'm also the founder of a nonprofit called Sony Inc., and we cater to students in grades 6 through 12 in the communities of Wyandanch, North Babylon, Amityville, West Babylon, New Hyde, Dix Hills, etc. My passion is with working with children and families, and that work is beyond being a dean. In order to be impactful in this profession, you have to connect with the kids outside of school. A lot of times we have a misnomer that school is the only way to make a contact, but what I've learned in the profession, if the student does not trust you, if the student does not believe in you, and if you're not consistent, they will not listen to you. So the old adage is, you have to show them how much you care before they begin to care. So I'm honored to have the opportunity to be back again, to be a part of this panel. I'm looking forward to sharing my experiences with you. Hempstead is dear to me. I'm born and raised in Roosevelt, but Hempstead is very dear to me through a lot of the community work I did with an organization called Remember Our Youth Incorporated, and that's outside of the scope of dean. So I look forward to having a conversation.
Wonderful. Now, the next person, I do know a little bit about him. You should clap for Mr. Saunders. I know Nikhil Goyal because he was kind enough to work on my recent campaign for comptroller, but I also know him through his work. He's the author of these two books, Schools on Trial, How Freedom and Creativity Can Fix Our Educational Malpractice. And he is only 24 years old and is getting a PhD at Cambridge. So, Nikhil, please tell us more about yourself.
22.
You're 22. Oh, excuse me. Reggie told me you're only 22.
Thanks so much. It's really great to be here. When Reggie and I have spoken over the past couple months, and it's amazing to see how these ideas have blossomed I think it's really, really critical that we are having this forum, the second part, to really put some actionable steps out there. And if I may make one very quick point, a lot of my research looks at inequities in public education, and it amazes me because we're the richest country in the history of the world, and you would think that in a country like this we would be able to solve problems like this. And I think that when we think about the problems of lack of healthcare, inequities in our transportation system, the levels of income and wealth inequality and poverty in such a rich country like this, we have to recognize, I think, that these are man-made problems, that they can be solved by human beings. They were created by human beings, so they can be solved by human beings. And I think if we are willing to put the political will and have a little bit of moral courage, I think we can solve these problems and show the rest of the country that we did dismantle this pipeline, which is destroying so many lives and so many communities around this country, and at the cost of human creativity, of individuality, and human freedom. And I look forward to engaging this conversation because I think we're at a critical juncture in American history, and this is a point where we must solve and engage in these discussions. So thanks so much, and I look forward to this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Darlene Mayer.
Good evening, everybody. Very happy to be here as well. I'm very happy to see this large crowd. So obviously, this is a major topic of concern in our community. I have the pleasure of having worked at Farmingdale State University for more than 25 years, particularly in the Educational Opportunity Center that we are housed in 3 locations, one of which is in Hempstead, the heart of Hempstead. And one of the things that we do, and I've had a direct impact on its operation, is making available academic services to our community, and that reaches anyone who is in need of that kind of either skill-based or either academic, entrepreneurial, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we further go into discussion. But again, I'm pleased to be here, and I don't know what else I want to share with you. I, too, am passionate about the concern of gangs and its impact on our society. And I do believe that part of why they are becoming so strong at this time is because there are things we're not doing. And I thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ms. Sophia Morote.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Morote. I am the Executive Director of the Long Island Education Opportunity Center. I'm already 13 months being Executive Director. One of the centers is the one that we manage here in Hempstead, but we have 3 centers in Brentwood and Farmingdale State College. I am highly committed with education. I am 25 years working in education, and I'm here today to talk about a successful program that we have run. But I will talk that in a few minutes, so I don't want to. But also, right now I'm looking a lot of kids. I don't know who was the idea, but I think it's a great idea, bring the kids, because they learn by example. They're here learning from whatever you're doing. They're here learning about the commitment. So congratulations to the parents or the person who was the idea that the kids are here sharing this moment with us. First of all, we have 2 people who have been working with me in this program. I would like to introduce is Dr. Michelle Gant, who is the director of the Metropolitan Detention Center. Thanks to her leadership, we'll be able to work on that program. And our professor who was teaching, was one of the professors who was teaching in the program, Dr. Yair Cohen. They will be part of the action plan. I do believe in action plans as long as we actually do it. I am really more, even having a researcher for many, many years, I usually more a person of action. So say you have to do this, let's go and do it. So whatever we plan to do this today, we have to make sure that next year we are celebrating the success of what we do.
Absolutely.
Right quickly, just talk about the MIT and Columbia University, what you've been doing as far as ex-offenders, right quick.
Yeah, so what we have been doing in the Metropolitan Detention Center, we created a college prep program. And then in that college prep program, we use techniques about how the components to deal in the diversity. Just to make the story short, or 13 students of the first cohort they were eligible to go to Columbia University, and we do have students who are right now in Columbia University, went direct from the Yale to Columbia, and our second group of 13 people as well. Now we have Columbia University and San Francisco College fighting for our students.
Wonderful. Okay, that deserves a round of applause. You have people going from directly from jail to Columbia University. So that certainly will help break the cycle because they're able to get educations, they're able to have successful careers, and with a successful career, there's no reason to become entangled in criminal activity. Can we give all of the panelists a big round of applause, please? Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll introduce myself. I would like to thank NAN and NAACP for organizing this wonderful event. I thank you for not just having one session in which we talk about it, we complain, we ventilate, but actually having a follow-up session in which we come up with plans, and they've already set up the meetings with the school districts for us to actually say, here are our plans, we will work with you on this. So can we again give NAN and NAACP a big round of applause for the Village of Hempstead, all right, for sponsoring this. My name is Alma Yawson. I live in Freeport. I'm a mother of two. I have a 7-year-old boy and a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old son. Both of them are in public schools. They go to Brookside in Baldwin. I'm Freeport, but Baldwin schools. I'm an attorney by training, but I too had a moment in which I had to say, we have to save our children. And so I actually left the field of working as a lawyer, writing bond disclosure for Citigroup to go full-time into children's publishing and education, because sometimes you have moments where you say, what am I doing with my life? I mean, our children are desperate for affirmation. They're desperate for encouraging messages. They're desperate to know that they are beautiful and they are worthy, and I have to do something about it. So this is my book. I actually performed this today at Turtle Hook Middle School. And so I am in many of your children's schools and hope to be in more of them. Okay, so now let's move on to our discussion. Mr. Hank Williams, I'd like for you to address, before we even get into our breakout session, why you are a unicorn, a black male teacher.
I think it would first start with mentorship, okay, having mentors come and speak to some of our students, some of the mentors and role models who actually have pursued these careers,
okay,
and how they became teachers. I know that I'm certainly not a teacher. I didn't get an education by choice. One of my good friends who I played basketball with told me that there were some openings in the school in Brooklyn, and he said, why don't you come on down and, join the school and teach? And I said, well, I don't know if I want to teach because I don't want to deal with a bunch of bad kids. And I went in the first 2 weeks in East New York, and I wanted to quit, because
wow,
it was unbelievable. But at the same time that I wanted to quit, I wanted to stay because I saw that there was a need to really help children, and that they were so confused and discombobulated, and kids didn't want to learn. And it was unfortunate, and I'm not going to say the school, but it was unfortunate that the principal of the school said, well, just contain them. You don't have to teach them, just contain them, keep them quiet. And so that bothered me as well, because I didn't want to keep them quiet. I wanted them to learn, I wanted them to thrive, I wanted them to pursue things. And they had a bunch of games and stuff that you can give out to kids, so it was really different for me. So I think that was kind of my motivation to really stay involved, because I was actually using it as a cushion, because there was just no job openings at the time that I graduated college. And my partner who I played basketball with had, told me about this position. So I don't want to say it was by accident, because I believe everything happens for a reason, but I just thank God that I'm involved. I've stayed in it, and my heart has always been in it, and now I'm able to continue it here in the Hempstead School District.
Wow.
But I think it would start with the modeling and just really allowing kids to see individuals who've come up in these communities and who become teachers and educators.
Wonderful. Does anyone else on the panel, would anyone else on the panel want to address that question?
Sure. My path was a little different. I started off as a student activist on a college campus, and attending Nassau Community College, I was exposed to a knowledge of myself, which I never had. I got introduced to an African history course, and when you realize that you've been lied to for 18 years of your life, and you get that awakening, you really want to share everything that you were able to obtain. And I ended up going to Stony Brook University and studied under Mary Baraka, and I became an activist first, and got my degree in African Studies, and the only way you had to use that and make money off it, you had to become a teacher. So as a social studies teacher, my first job, I wanted to come back home, which is Roosevelt. And with coming back home, my mindset was to start a revolution in my head about uplifting and bringing forth information. In the beginning, without any real information, you think that, okay, you introduce your children to a knowledge of self and automatically the light bulb will just come on. And I realized early on there had to be more than that. There had to be more than knowledge of self. There had to be more than just information. There had to be that relationship that I talked about in the beginning. And the reason why, in my opinion, you don't get many African Americans, my first year teaching, they gave me all of the difficult students out of the 6th grade. They moved all...
Purposely?
My classroom went from a balanced class of 50% boys, 50% girls, to by the middle of the year, I had all boys and 3 girls. And they thought because of my presence it would be an instant fix. It wasn't an instant fix. It took a lot of giving up my lunch break and holding children accountable and holding parents accountable. I was doing home visits in my first year. And that was being consistent, but everybody's not as consistent. I learned a long time ago that you got to love your people more than they hate you at times.
Wow.
So when you hold them accountable, that hate factor is there because you wear a suit, you represent the establishment, you're a sellout, you're Uncle Tom, you're this, you're that, you're all that and above, until you show and prove that you're other than that. So therefore, you're fighting an enemy on both sides. You an advocate for your community and you're fighting hard for that, but you're going against the system that is in direct opposition. So you're fighting the people you work for, and the people that you're trying to help are fighting against you as well. So you have an enemy on both sides.
Wow. Okay, so we're hearing the need for mentoring, right? We need to have more examples of diverse teachers, and we need to perhaps start programs in which those diverse teachers are potentially speaking at high school, speaking at colleges, and providing an example. Additionally, I'm hearing another route, which is activism. We need to be encouraging all those who are interested in the liberation of our people to explore teaching as an avenue. Does anyone else have a comment on this particular topic before we move on? We may have room for one more.
Yeah, I hear an awful lot of stories from teachers about how they got into teaching, and it was because somebody, their 5th grade teacher, their 3rd grade teacher, some high school teacher, a coach, somebody said to them, you would be a great teacher.
Okay.
And it just is astounding to me that that story repeats itself so often, and yet we don't, as a society, reach out to kids in high school, in college, and say, have you considered being a teacher?
Yeah, unfortunately that's not happening. Okay, well I hope all of you are keeping these ideas in mind as you make your 5-step action plan in the next 20 minutes or so. We'll be starting. So next, I'm going to address this to Mr. Nikhil Goyal. Keith Saunders had mentioned the fact that he goes to Nassau Community College, I believe you said, right? That's where you were at first?
Yes.
At first, and you start taking courses in African history, and your mind is just exploding with excitement, but also some anger and rage because you felt like, oh my goodness, where's all this information been all my life? So Nikhil, can you please tell us about how we can make sure that our classroom curriculums are more engaging and more responsive, more truthful, more culturally aware, so that we don't have more and more generations of people like Mr. Keith Saunders waiting till college before they learn anything about themselves?
Right. No, that's a very, very important point. And I want to address that first by giving a little bit of historical context for that student disengagement part, and then I can address it more completely. As an historian, one of the things I look at particularly is African American history, and I think if you think about the school to prison pipeline and the issues of student engagement, it goes back to all the reincarnations of American racism, all the way to from slavery to Jim Crow to lynchings to mass incarceration to housing segregation. And to me, this pipeline, most importantly, has been fueled by a number of things, including zero tolerance disciplinary policies, high stakes testing, student disengagement, the criminalization of blackness, and the failure of our governments to invest in education rather than prisons. And to me, really what this moment calls for is a second New Deal, a Marshall Plan for our young people, because what has happened in this country, unfortunately, is that over the past 40 years, we've seen a disinvestment in the social welfare state, from education and healthcare and social services, and much of that money has been diverted to war and the criminal justice system, and that is a shift that needs to take place in this country. And to me, the issue of student disengagement is very much so tied to student discipline, because one of the things I'm a strong advocate for is restorative justice policies, and this is moving away from zero tolerance and towards looking at conflict resolution and more democratic and decision-making bodies to engage with the issue of school discipline. And a lot of my research has been looking at a variety of schools around the country that deal with this issue in particular. And what they do is that they moved away from metal detectors and punitive disciplinary policies and actually began to understand and craft a culture of trust and responsibility and engagement in that school. They hired counselors in Philadelphia. They got rid of the metal detectors and focused on student empowerment and relationship building, and violence dropped 90% in that school in 1 year alone. Project-based learning is a very good model of learning that I think can engage young people. I think we need to invest in apprenticeship programs. Imagine if young people were actually allowed to engage in the real world at large, that they could work with professionals and adults on a regular basis, as opposed to simply being siloed in a school building for 6-7 hours a day. And I think that real world experience is something that I've seen that has worked with re-engaging youth who have been disengaged from a formal education system. And the other point I want to make is around teaching Black history. I think Black history is something that we need to make compulsory in our schools. This needs to be at least not just a 1 year course. This needs to be ingrained from K through 12. And when I say Black history, I don't mean the type of history that they teach you, that give you in textbooks, a very whitewashed, sanitized version of history that has been written by the oppressors rather than the oppressed. I think a history that looks at the fundamental texts and the texts that have shaped the revolutionary and social movements of this country, people like Du Bois and Douglass and Malcolm X and Baldwin and Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer. And I think we need to show young people that they come from greatness, that they come from ancestors who fought and gave us the rights that we enjoy today. And I think when you're teaching young people about Black history and you're teaching them about African culture and teaching them about the struggle of immigrants and other people who've been oppressed in this country, they recognize and they see themselves in those struggles, and they realize that those people were like them, and they can actually begin in the process of helping to liberate their own communities. Because I think too often our textbooks and our books do not reflect the diversity of the experiences of our young people in particular. And I'll finally end with this. I think one of the things that I'm a strong advocate for is investing in something called a full employment economy. In the 1960s, there was a lot of talk, particularly with the war on poverty and with King's Poor People's Campaign, which was the idea that you bring people of all different races together to address the issue of economic exploitation. Because we're all in the same boat here. We're all affected by the lack of decent wages and good pay and jobs and decent health care, and that we're all strung together by this common economic interest. And so one of the things I'm a strong advocate for is something called a job guarantee. And this is a proposal that is being considered by think tanks around the country. That this is something that was actually in the Congressional Black Caucus's budget this year. Unfortunately, our two Democratic members of Congress here on Long Island, Rice and Swazi, they both rejected this budget. This is a budget that includes $5 billion for summer jobs programs for youth. This would dramatically reduce youth violence and bring engagement back into our communities. I think these are issues that we need to address on a local, on a state, as well as a federal level, because it includes an intersectional approach that we cannot leave one or the other out.
Absolutely. Let's give that answer a big round of applause. And I think he's brought a lot into it. It's a more holistic view that we can't just approach this from a school perspective. We also have to look at our general government and what we're doing on a city level, on a state level, on a national level with respect to investing in youth. Would you like to address this?
Just to add an addendum to what the brother stated, I support everything he just said. I'm in the process of reading a book right now. It's called The Lies My Teacher Told Me, and it's an assessment of 12 textbooks over a period of time. I recommend it to everyone. The lies my teacher told me supports everything this gentleman is saying in detail. And as Linda Jeffries used to say, make sure you have good white sources for black folks to listen. So the lies my teacher told me.
Oh my, okay, so next, so I think we've addressed a lot here. Oh, you want to address this one? Sure, please.
The young man next to me made some great points. Here is something that I'm very active in my community, especially with the NAACP of my branch. So here's my point. I have a feeling that the issues we are addressing right now are nationwide, not just here in Hempstead or on Long Island. So here's a thought with the think tank action plan that you have in mind. Maybe we should be a pilot to show how to improve what we know is not correct. Here's a thought. Perhaps education, for whatever reason, has become an issue of discipline as opposed to bringing the best out in our children because of the intolerance that was identified and other issues. I don't want to make the race card the focal point. We know it exists. It has existed for many centuries. It's not necessarily going away, but we have a responsibility for our children. I had the opportunity to be around educators who are either presently in the public system or recently retired, and they both told me that Black history is being taught in the school districts, but as identified clearly, not in a way that children can take pride and ownership about what has happened in the past. So we need to look at ways through activism or just going to the school board and saying, this is what we want. We want to make sure our children are taught our history in an appropriate manner. And we don't want to make this about discipline in terms of punishment, but understanding how to survive in our society, whether it be by appropriate homework completion, behavior that's appropriate in the classroom setting, encouraging them to be the best that they are capable of being. So perhaps I would like to challenge us to use our discussion to prepare something that is a pilot for other school districts.
Absolutely.
Just a thought.
Thank you. Okay, so we've heard a lot. We're hearing about mentoring young people in high school, telling them about the teaching profession, outreach, making sure that they know about the teaching profession, that they actually give it some thought, making sure that we're reaching out to diverse high school students in order to build this pipeline. We're also hearing about making sure that our curriculums are fair. And I'll give you an example of how they can say they teach Black history, but it's not really the Black history that we would want. I got this example from someone by the name of Adelaide Sanford. She has the Adelaide Sanford Institute for Culturally Responsive Education out of the 5 boroughs. And so I was at an event with her and she gave an example. She said that there was a state regents exam in which they said, you know, all of these, what can we say about all of these leaders? And the leaders that they put were slave rebellion leaders. They had like Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, and then of the multiple choice answers, the correct answer, the only one that was appropriate, was they were all failures. Can you imagine? So this is an example. They'll say, oh, we taught you the history, but did they teach you the history in a way that was empowering or that left you feeling disempowered? Okay, so I just wanted to give you that example so you have some background to what Ms. Mayers and what Mr. Nikhil Goyal were saying, that, okay, they claim to teach Black history, but are they doing it in a way that's empowering? Okay, so next question. We work on this pipeline, we're getting these curriculums. If a child finds him or herself in a situation in which he or she is in trouble with either, I don't want to call them law enforcement, but let's say school security or law enforcement in the streets, how can we make sure that they are treated equitably, fairly, in a compassionate way so that that interaction is a catalyst for their positive change and not their long-term incarceration and later recidivism and whatnot? So I will like Dr. Beerwith to kindly start that response.
I think it's very simple. I think you start with a fundamental approach that instead of discipline, looks at restorative justice. or whatever term you
In
want.
school, even when it's in the street, even when they're stopped in the street. So you're proposing that for both in school and outside of school.
Yes.
Wonderful. Let's
Yes,
learn more.
as a starting place. I can remember in my last district, a place that shall go nameless, that we had quite a fight with some of the members of the board about what the purpose of discipline was. And some of us believed that it was the purpose of it when a kid got in trouble was to figure out how to help them take the steps that would get themselves back on track. And that, to me, varies student by student. The discipline codes in most places say, if you do this, then you will be punished this way.
Yes.
It is not an individualized approach.
Yes.
And its intent is to punish, not to bring someone, to give someone help and assistance and support and bring them back to to a place where they can interact with the rest of society, with the rest of school in a way that's productive and positive. My experience has been that if you take that approach, the likelihood of something happening again is less. If you take a zero tolerance policy, a thou shalt punish, you're more likely to find someone who's going to repeat, because they don't feel that the institution cares. And I'm talking more there about a school.
Sure.
If I'm a student, I do something wrong, yeah, some discipline. But if somebody says, why did you do this? I care about you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. I think the odds of something happening again are a lot less.
I appreciate that response. Don't we all? Okay. So this is going to be our last question before we break out, and I'm going to allow both Darlene Mayers and Sophia Morote, Dr. Sophia Morote, to answer this question. When they find themselves in jail for a period, what do we do to make sure that they never wind up there again?
Since we have the experience in the teaching in the jail, I would like to say that basically it's education. Education will be the key to take people out from the jail. Education will be the key once they are outside of the jail to make sure that they are individuals who are able to contribute to the society. How we do that? Basically using all the research that is behind us and make sure that we actually approach to the people we educate in a way they will understand and they will be engaged. We wrote a research about engaging inmates in a college prep class. And one of the ways that we engaged them was only 4 things, and they're all related with diversity, believe it or not. Dependability. We need to understand that the complexities of the diversity affects the inmates. During all these years they were before being inmates, most of them, 58% are from the African American community and 25% are Latinos. So what is these minority groups? They have been discriminated since they born, ridiculated, and basically they have received negative reinforcement. So when we go to these classes, we begin to change that mindset. I said, listen, we believe on you. You are here to learn. Right. And they were like, what? So I actually can go to college? I mean, what? Like, they were telling the professor, never in my life somebody actually think that I can be a college student. Never. I wasn't even part of my thing. So that's very important. Let me just read an example of the note that the students say, because that will picture what I'm talking about. This was a student who graduated. He was in jail. When the opportunity to participate in the college prep course came to my unit, I immediately signed up. I didn't sign because I wanted to further my education or because I wanted to learn something. I signed it up because I thought it would impress a judge during my sentencing. After 2 weeks participating in class, my mindset had completely changed. Something inside me had awakened and have the urge to learn more and more. I wanted to consume knowledge. My interest began to peak with every new idea the professor was implemented in the class. You see how you can change as an educator. I have been an educator for many years. I do have African American students who wanted to be, because I was teaching a doctoral program. And I said, especially in males, listen, guy, you have to finish this doctoral. You are the mentor. You are the person who will show the rest that it is possible. So if you are signed to this doctoral program, I will make sure you will finish. And I have many, by the way, the Suffolk sheriff, the county, he was one of my students.
Oh, wow.
I have many students who finish and they're very successful. So I believe you need somebody to believe on you. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, wow.
The second thing is dependability. The second thing is integrity. You have to show the ethics in the classroom. You have to lead by example, and that's important. Validity. Let the students to talk, to see, to express themselves. Use examples that relate. That's the whole history. You have to set examples that relate with them. Examples doesn't relate with them, they will be boring. Enthusiasm. The leaders who are preparing this, they really have to believe on them. And they have to show that enthusiasm. You cannot hire a professor or a teacher just because they want to make money. You want to hire a professor or a teacher who wants to go and teach and who really care for the students and who understand difference in instruction. You want the students to be sitting there. Well, there is different ways to teach. Some people cannot be sitting on one place. Some people want to move. There are different ways, and these have to be learned in the schools. So I do believe that there are things that we can do, not as a community and as instructors. For example, we have here, silly things make the difference. We have here, college education. What's the difference of this flyer? We have an African American male in the picture. We send in the message, you can do it. How you present those pictures, and then we have a Latino woman in the story. So the graphics shows when you go you open the TV and watch the TV and you see even commercials, you showing why people can do why people can do that. So that have to change as well, because that enter in your little kids' brains and telling you, listen, you're not doing that because this is for white people. You go and play football or soccer. You need to start changing that mindset of our youth. We also have for people who went to Carson. That's my last commercial. I am passionate about what I'm doing. We have this workshop. Look at this beautiful workshop. Is your criminal record preventing you from getting a job? There is a ways that people can delete a criminal record. Are you interested in learning how to clear or seal your criminal record? You know how many people who have mistakes when they're young and they have to keep paying when there is ways to eliminate those? So there are several things that we can do that. I believe that all kids have to be trained to that say this is day one. You're going to college, period. That's it. No questions asked.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I hope you all are pumped, okay? Because now you've heard from our esteemed panelists. They've given you some of their ideas, but we want your ideas. So you have work to do, but two items of work to do. So first, you have received this already. Sorry for having it upside down. The Mayor's Anti-Violence Task Force Survey. This should have gone around. I hope many of you have it. Please fill it out. You have a mayor who's actually interested in your ideas, in your perspective. So please make sure that you fill this out. And then secondly, we are going to have our breakout sessions very shortly. As I mentioned before, we have 5 topics. 5 of our facilitators here will be engaging in those topics. We will have, please raise your hand so they know who you are. We will have Mr. Hank Williams discussing with you all and coming up with a 5-step action plan.
is a set thing that changes, that can change the education commissioner. So the education commissioner, if you lobby that individual, Elia, going Commissioner Elia, that can change. Standards generally don't change drastically unless there's some federal legislation that is based upon it. I would say though that there are, I mean, from the schools that I've looked at in Pennsylvania as well as New York, there are ways to maneuver around those standards to allow some flexibility so that you don't actually have to teach each specific topic. So like, for example, if the class doesn't have standardized tests at the end of the class, then sometimes teachers may have a little bit more flexibility because they don't have to necessarily prepare for a test that they have to get through a certain amount of content. So
Not really a
flexibility, but
those college students who come in are going to mentor our students in the middle school because they're expressing to them what they're doing right now. I want to be a teacher and teach you guys. You know what I mean? And so this is what I'm doing right now. Okay, and what I'm doing here at the middle school is part of my internship to pursue the teaching career.
You know what, I mean, that's good, and I know what you're saying, because I know people that have done that. The only thing is what they were talking about earlier, like a lot of those schools don't look like us.
Well,
You know, I think
that's the job of the school to make sure.
It's just for some schools without children, because they don't look like us.
A lot don't, but a lot do. And even if you have to, when our children go away to HBCs, when they come home, make sure that they visit their high school and middle school. So they put them so that we can see. If, as a community, if we don't all get engaged, you know, and don't make sure that these things happen, we're going to continue to have. And so if we have places that don't look like us, we have children that do look like us, and we need to make sure that the children make their way to those schools. That's right.
You don't go out to your church.
I'm one of the business from Muslim, and I was born in I didn't go to real school and it did feel. My mom had to make sure I went to private school as she could catch up. So I do understand what you're saying. We need people from those schools come in, people like that graduated to come in. Because it does make sense. But I did agree with what you were saying, where like a lot of those kids who are from Mobile and Delphi, they don't look like us, and that is a problem. But I don't think it's that. I think we should try to force kids that did from the program, like from Hempstead and stuff, to go back to the schools to say like, hey, this is what you should do, or mentorship like that. That does make sense. But I think there should be some type of incentive because it's not necessarily easy going to schools like that while you're working, while you're doing this. I know like, it's important, but there needs to be more sensitive for like the help. Say like maybe I had a scholarship where I could something like that. That would make sense, you know.
I agree. We have a lot of success come out of the
Contrary to what you tell us about their crackdown and their zero tolerance and all of that, they haven't been able to stop games in 200 to 300 years, and they're not going to stop it because you have organized games that we haven't. So this is beautiful. I 100% support anything you come up with, but let's be real with how we're going to face us. Let's be real with how we're going to take care of us. Let's be real with whether we're committed to really making a change, or whether we're here to see what we can get, what we can tear down, what we can get out, and push out. It's really not going to work. It's for naught.
Well, Mr. Madden, not to answer that, just to clarification that, I think one of the things that we really have to be cognizant of, we're dealing with something that I believe your generation and the generations prior have to deal with, which is the fact that a lot of parents are actually of the younger demographic. If we look around this meeting tonight, you see that a majority of the people who are out, they're either, I don't want to say older, they're seasoned, or they are, so therefore their mindset is totally different. I think if we're gonna talk about actually impacting the community, we have to figure out a way that we can engage people who don't believe that we want to engage them. It's all good when we're educated and we're putting our thoughts on the table, but what about the person who dropped out in 7th grade who doesn't feel that they're worthy? Right. We have to show those people that we're interested in them, and then maybe they can come to the board. So we have to figure out some type of outreach where we can reach. Before you can teach the grade, you gotta reach them. You gotta bring them in. They have to feel invited. They have to feel comfortable and be a part of the table. They don't come because it's not because they don't care. It's because no one is engaging them. And yes, we can say, well, you know, your children should learn, but how do I make education a priority when education wasn't a priority for me? So we have to reach those people, and we have to figure out a way to power.
So, two quick points from you guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say for like a program we have received, like as far as grants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We used to probably something called a rate program.
The grade program?
Yeah. Maybe they can bring that back, which is a great program, to keep kids away from like gangs and drugs and stuff like that. It was a great program, but they kind of did away with it. So we actually kind of need to bring that back.
Okay, so hear me out here too. We need to open the schools up, because the schools closed down at 6 o'clock. Open the schools back up so young people can come back in. Take that parent involvement money that comes from the state and put it into teaching the adults and the parents on curriculum that's in the system. And also, this is real, no one teaches us about to be successful. To be successful is paper. So if you don't have paper, you can't make paper. Without paper, there's no paper. We don't tell our kids you need paper to make paper. Now it's plastic. But you can't get, without that knowledge, without knowledge, there's no freedom. Without knowledge, there's no education. And without knowledge, there's no power. So if we don't open the schools up, they should be open up all night, 8, 10 o'clock at night. And there should be programs inside the schools that these people can come into. There should be programs for adults, children, adolescents, ever. And I'm not even one more thing. A lot of children come to school hungry.
Oh, yes.
They come to school hungry. The only meal some children get is at lunchtime. So we have to open all that up.
So a lot of things that were said is actually implemented in the community school program, and a lot of the stuff that when monies are involved. This community school program is a funded program by the state, and it's something that's already been adopted in our district, but it hasn't been implemented at all yet. So it's something that if we want, as parents or as community groups, want to get on our district to actually implement this community school plan. It keeps the schools open. It funds programs. It educates the parents. And all of these things that we're talking about, it helps to enhance the curriculum. The community school program was something that they took around all of the school districts and rallied parents and everyone to get involved to actually push this program through a lot of districts. So something like that would engage the whole community. Right. So something that we should ask them. But it's not. And they accepted it. The board has already accepted it as a policy, but they have not rolled it out.
My question is the community school program that would include opening up the schools. That would include some of the food programs that are necessary.
Even the school breakfast and things like that.
I imagine even say dental and medical.
Right. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. So it actually keeps the
One more minute.
The schools becomes the anchor of the community. Any other final points? I'm going to somehow wrap this into one cohesive.
One big bill. Right. You can do it.
Any other? You guys have anything else? Any other final thoughts? What do you think, guys? You guys speak a little louder.
Talking about funds, parents.
One drive or something like that, raise money.
Oh, okay, okay. So fundraising.
And that's being done in different school districts. They do it all the time in different school districts. So that's something that they do.
That's great idea.
10 seconds.
Beautiful. Great idea.
Okay, everyone. It's time to wrap up. We're going to start calling on groups to present their 5.
We came up with a 5 plan. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
So our group got together and we came up with a 5-step plan for the most part that is supposed to encourage individuals to be educators. They're not necessarily in order, but one of the things that if we're going to put it chronologically, one of the things that is very important before we start anything is we have to define what we're doing. So in this point juncture, we want to define education and define its importance. That's a big gray area because at the end of the day, yes, we would love everyone to go to college, but at the end of the day, that plan, it might not be the best for a certain individual. Because, we all go to school and it's great and all, but to be honest, school doesn't make money. It more or less saves money if you're really good at it. As far as if you can get a scholarship for your academics and, then you'll save $250,000 over a 4-year span, and it's great. But if you're going to end up paying for school, for some individuals, it might be better off that you learn a trade or learn a service, which you automatically, instead of having to fill out an application, you'll be able to provide a service where you can charge people. But for those who are interested in education, one of the things that we all agree is very important is reading and writing. Reading and writing are 2 things that, you got to learn how to do in this world regardless. So in reinforcing reading and writing from a very young age, at the earliest age as possible, getting children into books, getting children into writing, whether it's about how they felt over the day, whether it's about something that they learned, regardless, there need to be some type of constructive activity towards reading and writing. Next, we got pre-K and grade 5 career development, and what this was we're trying to offer up to students at a very young age the career options that they could have, and exposing them to the career options that they can have, as well as exposing them to role models that they can see, not just that they do this, but they do this and they look just like you. That's very important because, as most of us know, or should realize, is a lot of what we act out as human beings is subconscious. So I may see a teacher, but if the teacher is white, in my head, I don't associate myself as being able to do what that teacher's doing, whether someone says it or not. That's just how we live, the world we live in. Someone talked earlier in our group about the impact of media. And if you watch TV long enough, you'll think you can't do anything if you're black and Hispanic because you don't see anyone that's doing anything constructive that looks just like you. And that just doesn't go to pragmatic things such as working. It also goes to family. Whereas, you can't even turn on a TV and see a productive and constructive black family. You want to see an all-black show, it's probably about men cheating and women being strippers. It's really hard to find a Cosby show on TV today. So with that being said, next thing is college students mentoring middle school students, and this is another form and another level of what we talked before. The only difference is the age gap, and now you're no longer looking outward and I'm looking at adults coming back to talk to me about what I need to do. Now I'm a middle school student looking at someone who's at the next phase of life, pretty much, coming back and kind of showing me
Okay, we're going to have to wrap
what
up.
my hard work can do, and how I can get to where they get. And once they get there, we would love for them to reinforce all of these goals and reinforce all of these things, so we can get to a point where we have a bunch of beautiful black men and women who would love to teach people to live. Great job.
All right, great. Next,
As a preamble, I want to note that our group was charged with coming up with strategies to ensure that students who are in trouble with the law are represented equitably. But we kept evolving towards how to keep someone out of trouble in the first place. So I got a lot of good suggestions that don't qualify, but they're in the direction of how do we keep students from getting in trouble in the first place. So we did pick 5. 1, and this is the law, but also school discipline as well. So One, ensure proper representation. Make sure that there is someone around who is adequately representing the interests of the young person. Two, make sure that there's an advocate in school, that there are people who will advocate for a student's interests. They get themselves in trouble in school, who's going to step forward and sit down with that young person and say, okay, what happened? How can I help you? Three, open and clear communication between school and parents. Parents need to represent their kids' interests, and they also need to be there to follow up. De-escalation strategies, and I want to explain how that ties with our charge. It was pointed out that sometimes students who get into trouble, whether it's with the law or in school, end up being punished more for what happens after the initial infraction. They get angry, so de-escalation strategies for both young people and for the adults on the other side. You know, I was taught when I was a kid, count to 10. Other things. So if you're an adult, count to 10 before you start punishing a kid. If you're a kid, before you react, count to 10, calm down. Don't get yourself in more trouble as a result of something else. And lastly, ensuring that there are a wide variety of resources to support someone who's in trouble. And again, a lot of great ideas here that have more to do with not getting in trouble in the first place. Fair?
Okay.
Great group over there. By far the best group in the room.
I'm sure some would argue with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Goyle. Even if you can read.
I can read now. I have a little stigmatism. So the question that we were kind of grappling with was how do we make schools more engaging places, and we got a lot of really good. We had a really good discussion, and fortunately we had a lot of amazing young folks who contributed to our ideas, which I think is always very, very critical. So I think I'll begin by first discussing kind of the main idea, and one of the ideas that we got from the young folks were bringing in more arts and music programs to our schools. I think we can do a lot to engage them in that way, because a lot of kids, they may not necessarily be attracted by kind of the traditional curriculum, and it could be a good way to bring in that and excite young people who may be more gravitating towards those subjects. Another idea that was mentioned was the idea of implementing this community schools plan. I think when we talk about a lot of the points that we address, is that would be very much so put into effect by the ideas that were mentioned, including things like opening up the school so that they are places where young people and adults could be effectively all day, or even on weekends in the evening, so that could be a good place. I think I know some schools in Long Island have done that, and it's actually been a good way, because what it does is it gets kids off the streets and in private locations where the parents may not know where they are, and brings them into schools where they're under the supervision of very responsible adults. And that can be a good way to kind of bridge the gap between the segregation that we see among young people and adults, and provide a space where they can interact and collaborate on a variety of things and activities. Another idea was, after school programs, bringing in more of those opportunities for young people. I think, as I mentioned very briefly, I think it'd be very good to have apprenticeship programs. I think this is a very good way to get young people, get them involved in obtaining a skill, or getting the networking experience necessary to obtain a job in the future. I know one school that I've looked at in Philadelphia called El Centro de Estudiantes. What they do actually is they spend 3 days, three days or so in the school engaging in classes, and 2 days the kids are actually out in internships. So they're out in a barbershop or a music studio, or they're working in a bakery, and they gain the skills necessary. And what I find is that the kids, they end up working in those positions, they get hired in those positions, they get decent wages during a summer position, they get something on their resume so they can show that they are capable of doing work. And a lot of these young people are actually folks who've been in the criminal justice system. So for employers who can't hire, who refuse to hire them due to a variety of reasons, this is a good opportunity for them to get that real world experience and show a future employer that yes, I did go through the criminal justice system, but I did have an internship or apprenticeship experience, and you can talk to my employer, you can see how responsible I was, and here are the skills I've obtained, and this is why you should hire me. So I think that's a good way to get them both the employability skills as well as the possible future employment after they graduate from college or some vocational program. And let's see what else. I know one thing that was mentioned was there's a police department program called the GREAT program, the Gang Resistance Education and Training Program that one person wanted to revive and bring into effect. And I think also the other idea I would mention is getting the parents involved, because I think, again, it goes back to the idea of having more parent workshops, getting them integrated into the community, and where I think young people may feel more comfortable doing that when their parents are involved per se, especially at the younger ages. And finally, funding. I think that's a really key part of this that we mentioned. I think that will really make many of these things happen. So, yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, our last group, which will tell us their 5-step plan for making sure that if someone does wind up in the prison system, that they are able to get back on their feet and become productive members of society. Are you representing that group?
Yes.
Take the mic.
Okay. So yes, we had
Talking the mic.
responsibility of making a 5-point plan for people who have been recently released, the young people that have been released from prisons and juvenile centers. And the first thing we came up is to remove the question. Okay, the first thing we came up with is to remove the question of have you been convicted of a crime from employment applications. So I think an initiative has already been started with Ban the Box, where people have already been advocating that a lot of states do away with this this inquiry as into their criminal records and a criminal past. And what that does is discourage people, because you hear a lot of people saying, well, I can't get a job, and they give up very easily as far as job hunting. And the second thing is we came up with was shedding their prison conduct, which means basically there is a culture that's ingrained in our young people when they go to prison. And it's hard for them to abandon that culture upon their release. So we need to basically work with these individuals to help them transition into a community where those behaviors, they know that those behaviors are not acceptable, and they can integrate better into society in the working class. The third thing we came up with is workshops as far as employment and employment readiness and resume writing and rap sheet repair. So LIEOC is one of those resources that they can run to as far as employment readiness, helping them resume write, and helping them do things like, what is that? When you get the certificate of disability of relief. So there are things like that that people don't really know about, where you can, after 3 or 5 years, be able to clear things off your record. Another one was recreational activities, where we need to help our young people to preoccupy them with more constructive pastimes, and creating agreements with educational centers such as LIEOC, where upon their release, they're able to transition better with the many resources that may be available to them that may not be publicized as much as they should. Another thing we came up with is parental involvement, so encouraging the parents to get involved with their children, and basically eliminating the dysfunction that they're experiencing at home. And psychological support. A lot of times they have some mental health consequences that upon their release they're broken, they need healing, and they may not be necessarily diagnosed with mental illness disorders, but they still need the support to be able to break that cycle and that mind state.
Thank you. Can we give all of ourselves a big round of applause? We are ending our program, but I wanted to introduce this beautiful woman whose dolls are in the back for her to just say her name and let you know her dolls and the pricing, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samiko Kreider, and I do empowerment workshops for young women, incarcerated, women with low self-esteem, and also I...
Louder. Oh, apparently they can't hear you. Oh, okay.
And I also do ministry. They're air freshener dolls, so we're fearfully and wonderfully made. It's not about our hair, and it's not about our bodies, but it's about our mind and our spirit. So we're doing health and wellness from the inside out, healing from the inside out.
Wonderful. Please support her work. Her table is in the back. Now, you all have done part of your homework. I've seen part of your homework or, workshop work. I hope that you all have also done the other part. If you do not have this, please go to Dr. Bishop Gates in the back. He has more copies. Your government wants to hear from you, all Hempstead residents. Please fill out this form. Please return this form. Do not complain that your voice is not heard when someone is asking you questions and you're not answering. So please do fill this out. Please, again, support the dolls. Support Mr. Goyle. His book is available, Schools on Trial. We want to make sure we all are reading that. Please also support my children's book. It's an incredibly empowering story. I can tell you more about it. And let's give our village, National Action Network, and NAACP another round of applause for facilitating this amazing event. Thank you and get home.
When you're going through, just remember this word.